Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I'm Andrew Scaff. He's Mike Werman. He's a medieval historian and future lawyer.
That's true.
I'm a biochemist, and we're going to be talking about quarterbacks today again. This is our fifth part of our 8-part installment on NFL quarterbacks.
A real hard-hitting series, I'd say, Andrew. We don't hold any punches.
Not at all.
Any punches here at the Warning Track Power Hour. We're really going to be opinionated, and we're going to make bold, fearless predictions, as we always do.
Yes.
And like we've done before, we are going to examine the quarterback situations for all of the 32 NFL teams on a division-by-division basis. We will talk today about the NFC North, and we are going to look at the quarterback position from the top of the lineup all the way down to the backup if necessary, and also maybe do a little bit of a forecast what the quarterbacks are going to look like this year, whether we think starters are going to play most of the year, or do you think there's going to be some controversy. This is a year as well where we have the very unpredictable COVID shadow looming over everybody. So
maybe as a riff off of that anyway, have you heard of the like designated survivor principle that may be used this season, where they keep one quarterback that's totally isolated from the team away, so that they
Peter Sutherland.
Exactly, right. Just in case that there is like an outbreak on the team, because quarterbacks tend to like work out together.
I see. Yeah, that would be a good idea.
If there is an outbreak, then there's still one quarterback that's separate from the team that they can bring in to make sure that there's like a quality player. Yes. Had you heard about that yet, or was it?
I heard a rumor about that in some places, but yeah, I hadn't really heard about that idea. That makes sense. They're like in a Dick Cheney style undisclosed location.
Exactly.
But again, you'd want your team. Presumably you would want your quarterback at least having some familiarity with the rest of the team, and not just be some random guy plucked off the street, even if he had been given the playbook ahead of time. So I guess he can Zoom meet or whatever, but you're not going to be able to Zoom meet and throw the ball very well. But.
Right. It almost seems like you'd have to have you'd want like a sub team, like maybe one of each of like the big like major positions anyway.
Or you have a guy.
Yeah. They're all separate from the rest of the team that they practice together. So
that's a good idea.
Like a practice squad sort of.
Yeah. I think maybe keeping
which they already have anyway, right? So
I think maybe keeping the practice squads more separate from the regular team might be an idea. And then just having them work out separately, and then maybe meet virtually, because at least they're throwing to real people and they can kind of come in that way. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with the COVID testing. Should we get started talking about our first NFL team?
Yes, let's do that.
So we're doing like as usual. We've been going from west to east on these, and the westernmost team is probably the team. Maybe that's probably the favorite to win the division this year, I would say. That's the Minnesota Vikings, who made the playoffs last year. Been a perennial playoff team under Mike Zimmer. Although, their number one quarterback is, of course, Kirk Cousins, who has been now with the Vikings this is going to be his third season. He came in as a big free agent signing from the Washington football team for several years there. He's 32 years old. He was originally a fourth-round draft pick in 2012 out of Michigan State. That same draft, of course, the then Redskins, now football team, drafted Robert Griffin III in the first round, and then they kind of set up their own quarterback controversy by picking two quarterbacks in the first 4 rounds and then driving Robert Griffin out of town.
After getting him hurt, basically,
yes,
right? By having him run ridiculous plays all the time. Right?
And I don't quite get the Kirk Cousins love. He was once the most highly paid quarterback in the league. I think he's average to slightly above average at best, but he did have a pretty good season last year. He had 107.4 quarterback rating, his highest ever, 26 touchdowns, 6 picks, 3,600 yards passing, a little bit low by his standards, but he has also, I think, re-signed for a new contract, where he signed Through 2022, he's making $33 million, and this is the next year. So he's entrenched as the starter for sure if you're going to pay him that much money.
He's actually like in 21 this year, but
only 21. So he's going to get
cap hit wise, it's only 21 million. But
okay,
yeah, it was part of a restructure, I think. So it's
his big. Oh yeah, because he got that really big deal.
So he's technically in the like 0th year of his 2-year contract that he has right now, because it was the last year of the previous contract. And the structure added 2 years to that. So
okay.
Yeah. So he had been part of a 3-year, $84 million deal, and then now it's added 2 years, and it's a $66 million deal. And it's all guaranteed money too, which I thought was pretty impressive that he's made.
Yeah, good deal for him.
But his contract escalates very fast. So next year he'll make 31, and then in 22, his last year of his contract, he'll make $45 million.
$45 million. That's Mahomes level money for.
Well, for like Mahomes' late part of his contract.
And certainly not Mahomes level talent. And so.
At 35 years old, which is how old when he gets to that.
I would be
but that number by today's cap numbers would be just shy of a quarter of the team's total cap.
Especially with the cap going down next year, who knows what it's going to go to? I think 177 million was the floor. I think next year they set. I wouldn't be surprised if they just went to the floor because the NFL owners are notoriously cheap. They could have a much higher salary cap, but they only go as high as what the lowest owners want to pay.
Right.
So. They could. There's the salary cap. It's not like we're tied by the salary cap. They could set the salary cap whatever they want.
Right.
And if they really, and some of the owners I say let's set it 20 million higher because then we can sign more players. We can win. The other, the Bengals owners and people like that don't want it that high. They want it as low as possible, so they can be as lazy and be as cheap as possible and still say, we're trying to remain competitive. And it's one of those. Yeah, I like how organizations they make their own rules and they claim that they're powerless to
the rules that they
do anything about it. And so gotta follow it. And so there's no reason other than the fact that they will take a loss 1 year because they're going to make money hand over fist every other year like they always do.
Yeah. Well, and they don't have to actually show what their earnings are anyway. So if they say they took a loss, they may not have taken a loss. That issue has come up with the Royals in the past. The family as owners,
and now they
did not take losses and
worth $1 billion plus, and
that's what they say though. But anyway,
so we get Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
I think Cousins is very kind of similar to Garoppolo in terms of his style of play almost, and he's a little older than Garoppolo, but I think the 49ers at one point when Cousins was a free agent and he ended up going to Minnesota, I think the 49ers thought they were going to get Cousins that year, and that's one reason why Shanahan wanted to be there and stuff like that. So I think he had worked with him in Washington maybe, but very similar types of player. I think Cousins and Garoppolo can lead you to a very strong year, but I think in the modern NFL, I think you need to look for a better quarterback than that. But he's average to above average as a starter, I think.
I think he fits the role that Minnesota plays to as their offense too, which is not a pass first.
Hand the ball to Dalvin Cook. Yeah.
Right. So they just need somebody that's a game manager type.
We can't have two good receivers, so we can only we can't have Thielen and Diggs because now two players want the ball, and we only so let's get rid of one of them and hope we're a better team by subtraction somehow. I don't think that approach is very good. It can kind of you can be bailed out by that approach if you have somebody like Russell Wilson, where in Seattle, where they also do not want to use their quarterback to win games for some reason, even though they have a top 3 to 5 quarterback in Russell Wilson who can win them games. Even I think Kirk Cousins can probably win you a lot of games against a lot of teams, but they really do not want that to happen. They want to have a defense first, running first team because I guess it's what fits the coaches. And also there's a sort of, I think, manliness that they think goes with that approach.
Right.
It might not be, it's not the smartest approach. It's clearly been shown it's not the smartest approach, but I think it's the tough approach for a certain type of NFL coach type of dude.
But it also protects their investment in the quarterback position too by not having him be at risk.
Or, let's pay him as much as more than anybody else, but also let's not use him. We want to put keep him.
Just have him hand it off and let the guy that's making less money get at risk instead
keep
of
him in the gilded cage. Yes, I don't get it. Cook is a great running back, and give it to him as much as possible is good. But again, a great running back can only get you so far. Look at the Carolina Panthers with Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley or whatever. And then look at teams like the Chiefs, the Patriots. Running backs don't matter.
Yeah.
As long as you have a few that can catch a ball here and there and run the ball here. A great running back is nice to have, but
probably not winning championships on the back of the running back.
Look, even the 49ers, they didn't have a great running back either, and they made so close. They didn't have a great quarterback or a great running back or great receivers. They had fantastic defensive line, and a good offensive line, great tight end. But so they're kind of big in the trend. The Vikings O line's pretty good, I think, and D line's probably not terrible either. But I don't. Yeah, so I worry again that approach. I think it's good. It's very Marty Schottenheimer like. You can get to the playoffs a lot. You're not going to win. You're not going to win in the playoffs very consistently. But Cousins is number one.
Entrenched though, not
entrenched. Yeah, there's no. And with that much money being invested, and also looking at the rest of the roster, there's no one, barring injury, that's going to start ahead of Cousins.
Right.
Even maybe if he's a colossal flop, they might take him out for a couple games to get his head back in, but see what they have. But they're stuck with him because of all that money that they have tied up.
Yeah. So
who's our number 2 quarterback on the Vikings, Andrew?
Next is Sean Mannion.
Sean Mannion, yes.
28, 6th year out of Oregon State.
Mm-hmm.
Was a 3rd-round pick in 2015. The Rams.
Yeah, he was the Rams back up until last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 4 years with the Rams. Now this will be his 2nd year with Minnesota. He did have one start last year. Where he went 12-21, 126 yards. No touchdowns, 2 picks, and a lost a fumble.
Yeah, it sounds like what the Vikings won out of their quarterback. Maybe not the fumble lost or the interception, but the few passes, 12 for 21, maybe be 14 for 21 for 220 yards or something. Yeah. But yeah, they want to control the ball. They want to control the clock. They do not want. That's that old adage that old time football coaches use. Well, when you pass the ball, 3 things can happen, and 2 of them are bad. Because incompletions and interceptions.
You only have to get 3.5 yards a carry, so
you also need,
that's all you need to do. So just do that 3 times and push down every time.
Yeah,
right?
That's fine. Yeah. Same thing for passing though. You can always fumble it too. That's one thing that's bad. Or not getting a first down, losing yardage. There's a lot of stuff that can be anyway. But also there's relative weights of those percentages and things like that are not entering. Just because many things bad can happen does not mean that bad things happen more times than good things.
Right.
Because most good quarterbacks nowadays complete 65% of their passes. So good things happen on 2/3 or so of those passes. Whereas I would say, do good things happen on 2/3 of runs up the middle? Probably not.
So, I mean, if you can get 3.5 yards in every run, then it's not necessarily a good thing. It's the thing that happens, right? So,
yes.
But it's not bad.
No. If you average 3.5 yards of carry, though, on the ground, you're probably not going to get that many first downs because, half of your carries are going to be less than 3.5 yards. And if you get 2 of those in a row, good luck. So, but yeah, Mannion is pretty much an unknown. I guess he played with Sean McVay for a little while. But the Rams got rid of him in favor of Blake Bortles last year. Now Wolford, their new backup, who was just as unproven.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned him as you thought maybe this was a potential hubris for the Rams, and they would this would be their comeuppance if Goff got hurt. From what I've read, though, it seems like the Rams think they have. I mentioned one time the Rams think they have another Kurt Warner kind of in that system. But maybe Mannion can again, he's the brightest of a fairly dim group of backups. It seems like the Vikings. Again, the Vikings don't seem to care about their quarterback situation that much because they pay Cousins so much. They don't really have him do a whole lot, and then their backups.
He's at a risk, right? So
yeah.
So they spend a lot of money on the one quarterback, and then they spend almost nothing on their backups, and they can get away with that if that's as long as they can protect him. So keep him in a bubble basically off the field, and
don't let him pass on
hand off 40 times a game, and
it's a strange philosophy, I think, but it's worked fairly well for the Vikings. They've been a solid team the last several years. Yeah. Of course, when they play good teams, I think they're at a disadvantage. They really showed this in the playoff loss, I think, against the 49ers. They also showed this even in the loss that we last year against the Chiefs, where the Chiefs were playing without Patrick Mahomes and still beat a full-strength Vikings team with Matt Morris quarterback. And it almost happened as well, too. The Chiefs, team is pretty solid, but Mahomes, they're at best, they're a Vikings level team probably without.
Well, at that time, the Chiefs' defense was not together.
Not as strong as it would be later in the season.
Yeah, it didn't come together until like week 13, 14 of the season.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you need some superstar talent really to set you apart, because all the NFL rosters are going to be fairly deep and fairly strong because you can have so many players on your roster and only 53 players on the active roster, right? At least.
And an enormous pool of talent coming out of college every single year, right?
Yeah. And so it's the top players that really separate you. The strong quarterbacks, the strong, good line, great defensive talent and scheme, and I guess and stuff like that. And the Vikings seem to be pretty good on both sides of the ball, but not overwhelmingly so. And again, it kind of reminds me of the old Chiefs of the late 80s or to mid 90s when Marty Schottenheimer was the coach. They had a very deep roster, very solid team, decent quarterback, but nothing that could overcome any sort of setback and still win against a good team. You had to have everything go right, and especially in the playoffs when you're playing. So I like the Vikings maybe to make the playoffs again this year, but I wouldn't.
On the throwing hand of Sean Mannion.
Yeah, so throwing hand Sean Mannion. Yeah, no, I think there's or any of these other guys. Number 3, you have, I think, listed as number 3 is a new draft pick, Nate Stanley out of Iowa, 7th round pick. Former backup to current 49ers backup C.J. Beathard at one point. 7th round draft pick out of Indiana. He started 2 seasons for IU. I don't know a whole lot about him other than that. Again, 7th round draft pick. He really, he's a practice squad guy, maybe third quarterback. Do you know anything about Stanley other than what we've?
He was 27-12 as a starter, 3 years as a starter, obviously.
3 years as a starter, okay.
And 3-0 in bowl games too. At my least favorite university.
University of Iowa City.
Long-time, forever rival of the.
Did I say he was from Indiana?
No, he's at Iowa.
Was it Iowa? Okay. Yeah. They call it IU though. Indiana's IU.
You did say IU, but yeah, U of I.
Iowa's U of I, right? Or is it?
Yeah, U of I. Ugh. Gross. So he's in his rookie contract. So first year, 4-year, $3.4 million deal.
So he's a little bit more on the cap than the third quarterback from last.
$629K is what he's making this year.
Okay. What's Jake Browning, the 4th quarterback listed, at least in terms of cap hit?
$610K.
$610K.
And Nate Sean Mannion was $1.05 million.
Okay, so he's over $1 million.
Not much more than Stanley.
No, they're all
6-year difference in playing.
I would say any of these guys could be the backup, really, depending on. In a normal year, I think there'd be a good battle in camp for some of this stuff, but we can't really have a lot of that. There's no preseason games, no real live contact to the extent that normal seasons have been. Jake Browning is our 4th quarterback out of Washington, undrafted free agent, 24 years old. A very good player at Washington. You want to talk about his career at Washington?
Yeah, he was on the practice squad apparently last year too with the Vikings. But yeah, Washington, he was a 4-year starter, at 93 touchdowns, 34 interceptions for his career.
It sounds very good. It's actually very skewed by the fact that he had one outstanding year. Unfortunately, that was not his senior year or even his junior year. He was great as a sophomore. He threw 43 touchdowns, only 9 picks his sophomore year. His junior and senior year combined, he only threw 34 touchdown passes. So it seems like he was a player maybe who has peaked at age 19 or 20. Which is sad, and that's probably why he didn't get drafted. He was undrafted. Probably after that year, he was, I would say you're playing that well at a big Pac-10 school, like Pac-12 school like that. You're probably in line for a first-round pick because Washington, that's one of the powerhouses, and he went all the way down to undrafted free agent. So maybe I don't know what happened to him. Maybe there was coaching changes, or there were injuries, or something. But maybe if he could recapture that magic, maybe he could be seen as a potential NFL starter, but that's a little bit troubling, I would say. It also reminds me a little bit of a quarterback we're going to talk about yet again, on the Green Bay Packers, who also perhaps peaked a year or two early.
Let's hold off on that, though, until they're the very next team on the list.
Yeah, we'll hold off on that. So, perhaps my least favorite player in the NFL, even though he hasn't played a game. Actually, maybe Taysom Hill for the New Orleans Saints might be.
I was waiting to bring up Taysom Hill, but now you beat me to it.
I don't have anything against them personally, but I have things against the way that people treat them as players, and they're not as good as you think they are. At least
they're not as good as somebody thinks they are.
Anyway. As somebody thinks they are. I guess everybody's that.
Somebody with authority thinks.
I'm certainly not as good as some people think I am either. I'm better than what others might think. But yeah, I really, anyway, I have grudges. If I saw them, I'd be perfectly pleasant, but I think.
Choose face, right?
But yeah, Jake Browning, I don't see much of an upside with any of those backups. I would worry.
The hope for Minnesota is that none of them ever see the field, right?
So. I guess that's the idea. Although Manning did start a game last year.
Started one game, yeah.
And Garoppolo, they did the same thing. Garoppolo got hurt in San Francisco, and they don't use him a whole lot, and they have, so there's all.
Well, like Garoppolo's injury last year though was against the Chiefs, right? That was like his own fault.
2018 when he was trying to battle for extra yards, and on the sideline. In a blowout loss.
Trying to get like one extra yard for no reason. And
I think Cousins is a little bit more, he's older.
He wouldn't be over at the sideline, so.
Yeah. He's older than Garoppolo was, so maybe he's kind of a little wiser and maybe a little calmer. He doesn't have that passion of youth anymore.
Yeah.
But he's still playing on an artificial surface in Minnesota. They're playing in a lot of domes. They're playing in a lot of cold weather. Injury can happen.
Because they are back inside now, right?
And it doesn't have to be a contact injury either. That can really So
throws back out sneezing.
I think the Vikings haven't really added anybody. They got rid of Stephon Diggs, their best receiver, or at least there's one of their top 2 receivers. Mm-hmm. Because they don't want to throw the ball to 2 people. They only want to throw the ball to one person.
Right.
Adam Thielen, we can only afford one good receiver on this team, they say. We can only have one good running back, and we don't need a quarterback. And it doesn't – I don't think it's a lesson for winning NFL games in the 2020s.
So what do you think that they're going to do this year with the well, let's go to the depth chart first, I guess, and then we'll predict how many games we think that they will start.
Okay.
Again, as the disclaimer, we're not predicting or hoping for injuries by any means. This is just a wild guess so that Mike and I can compete against each other in some prediction scheme that we're setting up for the season. Yes?
Super contest that we have together.
Yes. competition.
Go first.
Everything must be a competition. Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't think we really need to go into a lot of detail on this because we both are going to say that Cousins is
number one
starter. I think it's probably going to be the order that we listed them as with the
Mannion, Stanley, Browning.
Yeah, Cousins, Mannion, Stanley, Browning.
I think Browning at one point had more upside than either Mannion or Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll let him have a chance in camp and see if he can recapture that. I think he has a possibility of being the backup, but I think more likely than not, something has happened to him. Maybe he got hurt. I don't know. He will probably be on the outside looking in because they did draft Stanley. Although it's a 7th-round pick, that's not a real. Yeah. But you made it a little bit more of an investment than an undrafted free agent.
Right.
So I would probably say Mannion, Stanley, Browning as well, but who knows?
Okay.
In terms of games started, the Vikings, of course, like every team, wants their starting quarterback to thrive and start 16 games. Cousins has been pretty durable.
Again, not putting himself at risk most of the time, too.
Putting himself at risk.
Pretty conservative style of offense.
Conservative offense. So I think the Vikings are going to hope that they can get him 16 games. This, again, looks a little bit like the Rams situation with no really tested or solid seeming backups. But the Rams also want to win games with their quarterback and throw the ball and try to score points, whereas the Vikings are content to win 21-19 or 17-13 football games.
Yeah. Just control the ball on offense and play solid defense, and they can hang around in those games.
I think I'm gonna say the Vikings luck out and they get Cousins for 16.
All 16.
Yeah.
But
I would like to see some if it didn't involve somebody seriously getting hurt, I would like to see some chaos there because I don't really think the Vikings approach is very smart in terms of
it's unlikely to see like Cousins like have a bad season and they try to replace him with one of
those guys. No, there's no like saying there's no the Vikings fans are not going to be clamoring for Mannion unless he saves a baby from a burning building or something, then they might be a local hero. But also, we aren't going to have fans in the stands booing the starting quarterback if he does poorly.
Right.
There's not going to be pressure in a game time situation to switch a guy because there's nobody in the building, or at least very few people in the building, and a smattering of boos is not the same as 80,000 people screaming for your head.
Down boos, yes, negative energy, I still think it's normally I would expect the chaos with this kind of quarterback situation, but this is again where I just think their approach is so conservative with protecting the quarterback that it's unlikely that Cousins goes down for any reason, except maybe they don't need to play that last game. They're not playing for anything, so.
The Vikings
probably 17 that they go ahead and give Mannion a second start in his career.
So you think 15-1? Okay.
Just because, so I would put 15, just like it was last season, 15 Cousins.
Yeah, because I think the Vikings are going to be a solid team, and I think even though maybe last year at this time we were thinking the NFC North was one of the deepest divisions in football because they had 3 what seemed like they could be solid playoff teams, plus an up-and-coming team in the Lions. A year later, things look very different, even with 2 teams.
With an ambitious coach, too, in the Lions, right? So
Yeah. I think the next team that we talk about, which was the division winner last year, looks very different this year, even though they look much the same in a lot of ways. And that helps them look very different because I think their success last year was possibly a mirage, given the way they played most of the time, and also their new philosophy under Coach Matt LaFleur. And so we're moving on to the Green Bay Packers. The Packers have the premier quarterback in the division by a long shot as their starter, Aaron Rodgers, 36 years old. He's been with the team since 2005. He was a first-round draft pick that year. He was thought, maybe along with Alex Smith, to possibly be the number 1 overall pick. San Francisco kind of has their choice. They pick Smith. Rodgers ends up dropping all the way to 24. And we can talk a little bit about that situation when he was drafted. But he was a first-round pick. This is going to be his 16th season. Last year, 26 touchdowns, only 4 picks, but only a 94 quarterback rating, one of his lowest, through to 4,002 yards. But it seems like maybe either the team is going against, having Rodgers air it out, or Rodgers is becoming a little bit risk averse in his throws. And he's not the Rodgers maybe of 5 years ago. He's the 2-time MVP. But he's still a very, very good quarterback, and somebody, at least at one point thought to have been the most talented quarterback in the league, on par almost with Mahomes in terms of natural talent, throwing ability, improvisational ability. And, but it seems like he's a little bit unwelcome, or probably feels kind of unwelcome in Green Bay. Part of this, I think, is his own doing, because he's kind of got this kind of a little bit of an aloof personality, I think, especially for an NFL quarterback, even though he's in a lot of commercials and stuff.
But he is the face of the league, right?
He is. He's one of the
for good reason too. I mean, he has obvious NFL Hall of Fame resume.
Yeah, Super Bowl champion
and MVP.
Yeah,
two-time NFL MVP, 1 Super Bowl MVP also, 8-time Pro Bowler. NFL career all-time best in quarterback rating and interception percentage, which I thought was pretty impressive too. Yeah, 102.4.
Great player.
Only 1.3 interception percentage.
Yeah,
entire career.
He threw 13 picks like 1 year early, and then he's been like 6-1 the rest of his career almost in terms of.
And then there isn't a drop-off in playoff games. 19 career playoff games, 100.0 QBR compared to 102.4 for his regular season, and 1.8% interception percentage compared to 1.3 for regular season. So it's the clutch situation does not seem to affect him very much.
And usually he's had in the playoffs a team that's not as good as the other team that he's playing against. And this is something that the Packers have never really addressed during his tenure. They haven't gotten the skill position players that other teams have gotten for their star quarterbacks. Again, a little bit maybe like what's going on in Seattle, although I think Seattle's position players are a little bit better, stronger than Green Bay's. Although Green Bay had Devontae, Devontae Adams and people like that. They're great, one great receiver, pretty good running backs, but no great. They haven't had a big tight end for a while. They have, they tried Jimmy Graham. That experiment didn't really work out.
Mm-hmm.
No second receiver to talk about really.
Well, he tends to make regular receivers decent, like pretty good, right? And so the team seems to have responded that way and not gone after an expensive receiver and just Well, I mean, we don't need to spend money on somebody like that. We can just get some regular average guy, and Rodgers will make him better. So,
and I think that's not. Yeah, that's somewhat the approach.
But that's impressive though too, with his interception percentages, with not having like those typical fast, incredibly fast.
Yeah, and you got to think
types.
Half. I don't know if this is true, but a decent, sizable percentage of quarterbacks' interceptions are not their fault, and maybe 2/3 are probably the quarterback's fault. Some, more the quarterback's fault than anybody else's. But sometimes it's receivers don't run the right route. Ball happens to get tipped at the line.
The receivers can tip them too, and
freaky. Drop pass that can turn into a pick. And still having such a low rate. Again, kind of goes against also that idea that passing the ball is risky, but with Rodgers, passing the ball is not risky. Maybe it's become too not risky. You don't want to be Jameis Winston, but you also don't want to just throw the ball 3 yards down the field either, and have teams really shore up against the short pass and not have to worry about anything else. So that may be something that Rodgers, but it doesn't seem to be something that Rodgers is doing alone. And I think Matt LaFleur, the coach, who at one point was a assistant under Sean McVay, which is probably why he got the job. But he was also the coordinator at Tennessee, and Tennessee, pre-Tannehill Tennessee did not have a great offense. And so but it seems like LaFleur and the GM Brian Gutekunst really want to establish themselves as the brains of the Packers operation and not Aaron Rodgers. That's from we've talked a little bit about this before, maybe more than a little bit about this before, but that's so if I were Aaron, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, I guess. Which is
maybe just real quickly though, I'll just say about like his career earnings, because we'd kind of done that a little bit with the long entrenched quarterbacks anyway. He's so through 2019 currently he's made $219 million in salary, and if he plays out his current contract, he'll be at $314 for his career, which is very close to like Matt Ryan's numbers also, and they've been in the league similar lengths.
Matt Ryan's been around a little bit shorter time, maybe 2 less than Rodgers.
And this is in the ramp up of Rodgers' salary too, because he'll make $21.6 million this year, 36.4 next year, and 39.9 the year after that, which may be why the team is looking at other options, because that ramp up is
very high.
So dramatic.
And it seems
possibly
like even with a relative bargain, they still haven't gotten anybody as real great free agent signings. One of the reasons also nobody wants to go to Green Bay is because it's cold and a small town. It's not as fun as even Kansas City seems pretty lively compared to Green Bay or Cleveland or places like that. Even if it's cold, well, at least you've got a bigger city to be part of.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a little bit of a problem. But Green Bay, if they win titles a lot, people are going to go play it.
But Rodgers still only has one Super Bowl, right?
One Super Bowl, and it's kind of it's criminal almost to waste Rodgers in his prime, because he's more talented than Tom Brady, but he hasn't had the scheme or the team, the coaches around him. Although I think Mike McCarthy is a decent coach. Maybe he'll do better with Dallas, but again, conservative offensive planning, try to rely on a strong defense. Defense, as well as we've talked about before, is something that fluctuates much more wildly from season to season than offense. Even if you have a great defense, I think teams can figure it's. I think offense is clearly the way to go in the NFL this time, and relying on defense still is a little bit out of step with.
Two quick stats I had too on his like lack of interceptions too, which I think is impressive. Only 2 pick sixes in his 5,900 pass attempts, and he had gone at one time 402 consecutive passes without throwing an interception. And then I guess in that streak also he threw 49 touchdowns to no interceptions during that stretch. That was pretty prolific.
Yeah,
he's numbers.
He's dropped off the past couple of years, but also I think that's because this team hasn't been as good. But they still went 13-3.
But dropped off not necessarily because of being like riskier, right? Just dropped off because he's either throwing fewer passes or not throwing his bar. It's probably just part of just the depth of throws. Probably dropped because he is now.
He's got a great arm. He's got great touch. He's got everything if he wants to throw the ball. But I think also he has, because he throws so few interceptions, I think he really, really is not trying to. And like he's lost maybe some of, maybe Brett Favre was too much on the gunslinger side for the Packers. Rodgers is too little, but the new management doesn't. I don't think it would matter if he was riskier. If he would, be a little bit flashier, because I don't think they like Rodgers. And I think that's why one of the main reasons, again, they don't think he makes too much money. The new coach wants to be the face of that team. He doesn't want Rodgers to be the face of that team.
Right.
I think.
So now we're at this point where we get to talk about the person you've been waiting to talk about for
Jordan Love.
For all of these different sessions we've done so far, this is what you've been waiting for, right?
This is what you've been waiting for. Love. One of the problems is that Green Bay does not have a real owner. They are a collectively owned team. There's no guy telling the GM and the coach, this is stupid what you're doing. You should be not doing this. And I think what they did drafting Jordan Love, again, fine quarterback prospect. At least he was 2 years ago a fine quarterback prospect. He really dropped off his senior year at Utah State and not a powerhouse team. He was second team all Mountain West Conference his junior year. If you think that's a great accolade, that's the biggest accolade that you can see on his Wikipedia.
Oh, there's maybe one more.
One more, okay. Bowl MVP, I think maybe.
That was it. Yes, the New Mexico Bowl MVP.
New Mexico Bowl. Oh, that's
43 for 359 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
New Mexico Bowl. Also his junior year though.
Hey, you only can beat the team that you play.
Yes, that's true. I'm being a little bit hard on Jordan Love, but he was the 26th overall pick. The Packers traded up. They were, I think, going to pick 29th or 30th. They got up to 26th. Even though I don't think any other team was planning on picking Love ahead of them. But from what they said, he was maybe at best the 4th or 5th quarterback prospect in the draft.
Maybe was that position from the year before. They just
the year before, yeah.
They didn't reorder it after.
No, after he was seen as a poor man's Pat Mahomes. And everybody's looking, just like people were looking for the next Sean McVay, they were also looking for the next Patrick Mahomes. And I think that's one reason why they fell in love with Jordan Love. He has the size, the arm, maybe of Mahomes, some of the swagger. But one of the problems is that the Packers already have a great quarterback. They went 13-3 last year. Why not try to shore up some of the problem areas of your team to boost you into NFC title contenders, Super Bowl contenders, rather than let's squander. Maybe it's a little strong, but let's not really look to improve on the weapons that Aaron Rodgers has to throw to the offensive side of things. We haven't drafted a skill position player in the first round since Aaron Rodgers, I think.
Well, who was drafted in a similar situation, right? So
yeah, that's true.
He was drafted with an entrenched Hall of Fame future quarterback, and before that quarterback had any intention of retiring or moving on, and they're drafted in almost the same position, right?
It was almost
Favre was picked two picks lower in the draft than Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, Favre, you could say, was even more beloved in Green Bay or by the NFL than Rodgers was.
Again, face of the league.
Yeah,
it's like we've already seen the story, right?
But you also have the fact that Rodgers was seen as a potential number 1 overall pick who happened to fall because teams did not need quarterbacks that year, apparently, or they were too dumb to realize they did not need quarterbacks that year. And the 49ers ended up making the decision between Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers. They ended up making the wrong one, probably, although Smith has had a decent career and is a solid quarterback, great guy, smart guy, trying to come back from that horrible leg injury that he had. But Rodgers ended up kind of falling to them and say, well, can we not pick this guy here because he is, we thought was going to be the number 1 pick overall. Why not get him at 24 is a tremendous value. Whereas, if anything,
you don't want to pass up the value in that case.
Yeah, the Packers should have traded down if they wanted to get Jordan, because they could have maybe gotten him in the 2nd round, possibly in the 3rd round.
Which would have saved them money too.
Saved them money. Also got them more draft picks.
Let somebody else trade up and then get the guy that you want. Yeah.
As we said before, Jordan Love wasn't even the best Love quarterback in the Mountain West Conference last year. That was Josh Love, and he got picked up by the Rams
I think that sounds right.
I think it was the Rams as they're battling it out for the undrafted free agent with the guy from Virginia, Bryce, somebody, as a potential, the San Jose State quarterback, Josh Love had a better year in the Mountain West Conference than Jordan Love did, and even just the picking of Jordan Love, it looks so suspect because we talked about this before. Though you look at the Wikipedia page of Jordan Love as a 1st-round draft pick, his page is almost blank and empty. There's very little discussion of his college career, as if we want to push ourselves away from that. It does talk a little bit about his junior year, but then it doesn't talk at all about his senior year, which was not as good. I think 18 touchdowns, 16 picks, something like that.
20 and 17. I went back and looked it up. Yeah, from the Utah State website.
Yeah, 20 touchdowns, 17 picks. New coaching.
Fewer yards actually too. Is 160 fewer yards, same number of games, but yeah, 12 fewer touchdowns, 11 more picks than his junior year.
Yeah,
So,
and so
yeah,
it's not all on him.
around.
But you would say if you're going to draft a quarterback from a small conference in the first round, you would think, well, they're going to dominate that conference. Yeah. If not, their team is even if their team is not so great, they're going to put up huge numbers.
Right. Or at least the quarterback would have gaudy numbers, right?
Yeah. Like you say, he's the quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Well, Patrick Mahomes threw for,
ridiculous yards.
Every touchdowns.
Yeah.
Every he threw for like 700 yards in one game. And Texas Tech wasn't that. It's the offensive, defensive teams that Texas Tech played weren't always that great, and the team didn't win a ton. He was, just lit it up. And Love, maybe his junior year had some of that pop, or I guess his sophomore year had some of that pop, but his last year as a starter, he didn't.
I did find one big difference between those two seasons, and it was there's an absence of one particular player apparently that they had a very strong running back his previous year, and with his absence, they did the next year the stats they did not replace those stats in the table.
I think I know who this is. Is this current Chiefs third string or fourth string running back? Darwin Thompson.
It is
6th-round draft pick.
Absolutely. And it is. It's kind of interesting though, because it was at the top of the yardage list. Darwin Thompson, like 1,050 yards. The next year, it's like the guy that was number 2 on the list, like 850. That same guy was there at 850, but there's nobody, replacing that.
And think, Darwin Thompson was a 6th round. Again, he was the best player on offense. And he was like a sixth round pick for the Chiefs. And prior to Damian Williams is opting out this year, he was thought maybe to be a roster casualty for the Chiefs. And now this Jordan Love guy,
also because of their new draft pick then too.
Yeah, new draft pick. Yeah, of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And people were in some ways criticizing that pick because of you don't draft a running back in the first round, although you might not want to draft a running back in the top 10 or even top 15.
Yeah.
I think later in the first round.
But at 30,
32. Yeah.
32,
That's a second round pick for it was a second round pick until 15 years ago.
Well, that guy's not going to be there at 64, right? So
yeah. And
so you take him at 32 if you get him.
It's turned out to be a brilliant move because Williams is gone. Damian Williams is gone. Now Edwards-Helaire is going to be there. It's going to be
maybe their number 1 running back. So
yeah. So that turned out to be very smart. Again, the idea, I guess you could say, well, if Rodgers gets hurt, Jordan Love might be a smart pick because they needed a quarterback and the best one available. Again, although you could say, well, they could have gotten a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
They could have gotten Colin Kaepernick as their, or Blake Bortles or, somebody, like that. But yeah, Jordan Love could turn out to be a great player, but I think he is more of a statement that we are in charge, LaFleur, GM, Gutekunst, than more in charge than Rodgers. And we don't really like what Rodgers, the way he acts. He kind of is a prima donna. Maybe he chased Mike McCarthy out as coach, maybe for good reason. But I think they really probably only want him around another year or two until they can either Love's ready or they can get rid of him without too much cap damage.
Yeah, it may be more about the salary than they will say ever though too, right? So because if they want to restructure it, then maybe it's just a contract negotiating chip where they're saying like, if you won't restructure your contract for less money in the next 2 seasons, then
that's a big price to pay. Where they could be saying, well, they could say the same thing and say, well, we're going to sign a free agent quarterback instead of wasting our first round draft pick on this quarterback. Because then we could get a better player in the first round to get a wide receiver, especially in the draft that was seen as historic in terms of its wide receiver talent.
Mm-hmm.
And the Packers have a gaping hole on one side of the field at wide receiver, it seems like, not getting somebody first rounds. And then the next round, they're drafting another running back where they were very deep at running back already. Or third round was the running back, the guy from Boston College they got when they had Jones and a couple of pretty good running backs who can catch the ball and do a lot of things. Again, running back is the position that you can find a lot of. again, the Chiefs were stacked.
They could have taken Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right?
Yeah, they could have taken Edwards-Helaire. They could have taken Thomas from Wisconsin. They could have taken Swift. They could have taken a lot of guys that were. I think the running back even they took in the second or third round was seen as a reach as well, kind of a mid-round pick.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know. Maybe we could. Again, we're not professionals. They are, but I don't really think this is a good pick, and I don't really think it's a good pick in terms of talent, because I think the Packers did finish 13-3 last year, but they were a pretty weak 13-3. They were kind of the profile more of a 9-7 team in terms of points scored, points allowed. The teams they beat, they beat the Chiefs without Mahomes barely on a kind of lucky play. And even Rodgers played very well, but he didn't have a great team around him. So, and they really showed their weakness in the loss against the 49ers in the playoffs, where they were just blown out from the very beginning and they couldn't come back because they don't have an offense other than.
And to be clear, sometimes I will just make arguments to try to make sense of things. In this case, I do not think Green Bay Packers management has any idea what it's doing.
I think the idea is it's that we want to show that again it's just that we want to piss off Rodgers, because we do not like Aaron Rodgers. He's weird. He's thinks he's he's better than the rest of us. And again, I don't know if his teammates think of him that way, but I think the management of the team thinks of him that way.
And realistically, they should know the history of Green Bay, and that their fan base just went through this, and they do not want to do that again. The fan base.
No. Yeah,
and management does not care at all about the fan base, apparently.
They had two of maybe the top 10 quarterbacks of all time, and they've only won 2 Super Bowls with those quarterbacks. Favre, after many seasons, only won 1, and Rodgers has only won 1. It looks like he's probably going to be stuck on 1.
And would you put that on those quarterbacks for why they didn't win more than 1?
No, I don't think they had great teams. Favre almost won back-to-back. They when they lost to the Broncos. When Elway won his first in like 98 or whatever it was.
Yeah, something like that.
January 98, I think, is when the game, or February 98. But, after that, they were always decent, but they didn't have the top level skill position players. They had good running backs, Almon Green and people like that. But again, it's hard to win in the NFL. There are lots of good teams out there, but they didn't reach the Super Bowl very often either. So it's not like they went to the NFC and just lost in the Super Bowl or whatever. Yeah. The Packers have only made it to 1 Super Bowl, and they won that one. That was when they were I think they were a wild card team. They were a 6th seed or 5th seed.
It was, yeah.
Against Pittsburgh 10 years ago. So they have really, I think, squandered Rodgers, and the NFC, I think, his
MVP seasons were in 2011, 2014. So we're 6 years beyond that now, and the odds of him recapturing that kind of status is almost nothing at 36 or older, right?
So I think he's on his way out. I think picking a quarterback for the future might be a good idea, but I think the way they did it was not right, and maybe this was not the year to do so. Maybe next year would have been the year to do so. But I think they are also gambling on the Mahomes. They need a Mahomes, and this guy, he sort of looks like Mahomes if you squint really hard and you ignore what happened last year. And so
what you're saying though is that this probably wasn't the right year, and this wasn't the right guy either.
At least I don't think. Again, this would be something to to tune in next year and see what happens 2 years from now and see if this is anywhere near the truth.
See if it's Favre.
Yeah,
Rodgers too.
It's not like we're taking a position that is
the re-Rogering
unpopular. This seems to be conventional wisdom by a lot of the teams out. A lot of the people that I've heard talk about this. Maybe not to this extent, but most from what I've seen, most people do not like this move. Probably, if I were a Green Bay fan, I would not like this move for sure. And you could also maybe argue this is a little bit like what happened with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, whereas Alex Smith was a solid quarterback, led the Chiefs to playoff victories, and then the Chiefs drafted a quarterback who was not going to play the first year at least, and
it was clear that that's what they were doing. And I think they made it clear with Alex Smith that that's what they were planning on doing too. So it wasn't a surprise for him and an outrage for the fan base that loves the quarterback.
Yeah.
It was
Mahomes was
also and then Alex Smith responded with a fantastic season.
Yeah.
Which made him a valuable trade piece then too.
And personality-wise, I think he fits that role as a mentor better than Rodgers. In terms of, again, maybe that's another reason why you would not want Rodgers, but also that's another reason you don't want to draft somebody below him if he's not going to help, mold his successor. Because if he's going to undermine him and stuff like that, well, he's going to be less successful too. And you want to get rid of that guy before you bring in his supposed successor, rather than have him try to.
Well, you get them close to like where they're on their way out instead of being forced out. Because I think too, if Alex Smith we're going to try to rehab and come back and play another season, I mean, I think he would come back to Kansas City. I don't think there's a fractured relationship with the team. But if Rodgers leaves Green Bay, there's no way he's going back to Green Bay.
But I think a lot of that is because Mahomes has been so successful. If Mahomes had simply been a Baker Mayfield type and was they got rid of Alex Smith for that, well, that's a big. It was a risk to Mahomes, but I think Mahomes as a draft player was really ascending that year. Yeah. He was not somebody who had his best year 2 years ago.
It is slipping.
He was somebody that they thought a lot of the insiders thought, well, this is the best. This is possibly the best. He's either the number one quarterback in the draft or maybe the number 3 at worst. And a lot of Sean Payton and the Vikings were going to trade up to try to get, and the Saints were going to try to trade up to get him as well. So there were a lot of teams that wanted him at that spot. And so, but Love, this case, it seems like he had some pre-draft love at one point, but it kind of faded from what I was, again, this was during the NFL draft during COVID in April when there was nothing going on. This is all I really probably you read about because this was the only sporting event that was taking place. And so I really followed this draft, and that was a dumb move.
It was crazy when it happened. Yeah. Well, so what about their third quarterback then, Tim Boyle? You think Tim Boyle? That maybe he's the quarterback of the future, not Jordan Love?
Possibly. Undrafted free agent out of Eastern Kentucky, transfer from UConn. I don't know a whole lot about him.
This is what he did have. He was a third string quarterback in Green Bay for the last 2 seasons.
That's true. He did. He started. Did he start a game?
He made it into a game. He went 3 for 4, 15 yards.
That's what it was. Yeah, 4 passes.
He was a 3-year backup at UConn before transferring to Eastern Kentucky. He then had to sit out that year. So then the year between, and then he had 1 season then at Eastern Kentucky where he went 2,134 yards, 11 touchdowns, 13 picks.
Yeah.
And that, yardage-wise, was the Ohio Valley Conference leader in passing. So it's apparently not a pass-happy conference.
Not a pass-happy conference. Not a powerhouse conference either. Tim Boyle. It's nice that he's in the league, but that's not a very good backup situation behind Rodgers. I guess you think Love. Love is a prospect for sure. I guess not every player that plays in college is as successful in college as they might be in the NFL, depending on how they're used, what the scheme is, how they develop, things like that. So sometimes you do have diamonds in the rough, but it seems like Boyle is not going to be that guy. Love, I don't know. So
you may almost be rooting against him to some extent.
I don't root against many players.
Yeah.
I'm more rooting against the GM and the coach for the Packers.
I fully understand that.
And I'm not the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan in terms of his personality, but
he's the face of the league, so
he is. He's kind of from what I've read, he's kind of a weirdo and has he and Danica Patrick are no longer seeing each other from what I've read as well. But he is good. I don't know. He seems he's an interesting guy though, and I think he's not a typical.
Well, I think he does have the tendency to rub people the wrong way. He has like his close family. I don't think.
No, I think so, yeah. They don't talk to him. I think that was part of his Danica Patrick thing. They didn't. Maybe he broke up with his other girlfriend and then started dating her. They didn't like it, or she didn't like. I don't know. But it's. I think this is all petty vindictiveness, or at least 80% of the reason Jordan Love was drafted was because we do not like Aaron Rodgers, and we can make it look like, oh, we're getting the next Patrick Mahomes, which maybe that's part of it. When they could probably even talk themselves into thinking, oh, that's why we drafted him, because we think he's the next Patrick Mahomes. But it's because they're coming from this place of, oh, that Aaron Rodgers thinks he's so big. We want to show him, and I'm Coach Matt LaFleur, and I was brought in because, well, I knew Sean McVay and haven't done anything. And, well, look at me. We led our team to a 13-3 year because I'm so great. We got lucky into it. But this seems like a Chicago Bears kind of fall for the second year, even if Rodgers plays well.
Yeah.
I don't think they have the team.
Yeah. Well, and I think too. Now, having collected what we've both said, we're probably going to say that the depth chart's the same for both of us. Rodgers, Love,
Boyle, and I could see. I'm talking about playing number of games. I could see Rodgers checking out and not deciding, "Oh, I'm just not going to play. I'm going to play."
Yeah, you can see that. You can see the coach sitting him out for no reason, really, right?
To play Love,
finding some excuse to have him sit.
Yeah, I think
maybe even something dastardly.
I think it's a potential mess in Green Bay.
Could you see LaFleur getting a fake COVID test just to make Rodgers sit out for 2 weeks?
I don't think that would happen, but I could see them say, "Well, I think Love is." They say, "Oh, Rodgers is violating team rules, or not," and we want to see what Love has, especially if the team doesn't do so well at the beginning. They're gonna have a good schedule, tough schedule, first place schedule, and. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say that Rodgers does not start every game this year. He's had some injury issues as well 2 years ago, of course. So I'm gonna say he starts 11 games, and that'll leave Jordan Love with. Yeah, I don't think Timmy Boyle's gonna get any starts. So let's say 5 for Jordan Love, 11 for Aaron Rodgers.
I still think that Rodgers will at least pull the team along to a decent enough record where it won't get to the I'm going to check out sort of status, because the NFC North doesn't tend to be like somebody running away with it, like with a 14.
Yeah, it's a competitive division. Either everybody's kind of low,
and there's such a deep-seated dislike of the other teams in the conference that they really bring it in the conference games, it seems like. And they do tend to split the home and away series. Mm-hmm. I still think Rodgers will end up playing, I'll say 15 games, but Love will get one start late probably. It's similar to like the Mahomes season, but not like the last, like where Mahomes got the last start of the 2017 season. Yeah.
I'm rooting. I am rooting for chaos, and I think I'm letting my picks cloud that a little bit. Like maybe you with the Rams, we're rooting for chaos.
Yeah, I like to dislike the Rams though too, because of McVay and some of that situation they have set up there. It is poised for issues.
Yeah.
Some of these others, I think, Green Bay's like coaching ownership. I guess not ownership. Coaching management is questionable at best.
I think so too. Again, we could be wrong, and they could somehow really have shocked all of us and fleeced everybody and say, oh, we got he's not a poor man's Mahomes. He is a relatively wealthy man's Mahomes.
Mahomes is actually like Jordan Love, not the other way around, right? Yeah,
he is the Bob Seger to the Bruce Springsteen of. I
actually prefer Bob Seger.
You do?
Bruce Springsteen most of the time.
I prefer Bruce Springsteen to Bob Seger.
I think most people do.
Bob Seger has a few good songs. I think Springsteen's a little bit better. Quite a bit better, actually. But I don't think Springsteen's the greatest. But I think he's better. I think of the working class heartland rock. My old argument was that yes, Bob Seger is the poor man's Bruce Springsteen. John Mellencamp is the poor man's Bob Seger.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of popularity, Mellencamp might be as popular or more popular than Bob Seger, but I think he's nowhere near as good.
Seger. But he does seem to resonate with the bulk population, I guess.
Well, right? It's like Bruce Springsteen is more popular than Bob Dylan or Neil Young, but I don't think he's as good an artist as either of them.
Yeah.
But he's more popular. So, but I think Springsteen's great. But I don't think he's as transcendent as those other guys. But I think Jordan Love, I don't know, he's got to turn out to be really good to make this worth it, and not just be a service.
Yeah. So in that analogy, then, who is Jordan Love?
So are we saying Mahomes is Springsteen?
Yeah. In this scenario,
the boss. Okay. Jordan Love's got to be at least Bob Seger.
I thought that's way higher. I thought you're gonna bring in like a fourth guy. I'm
trying to think of who that would be.
Eddie Money. Or
I was thinking of working class heartland rock. Well, yeah, I don't know.
Bon Jovi.
Bon Jovi. He's kind of developed that. Yeah. Since they're New Jersey guys. Yeah, maybe we was gonna go Jersey guys. I think let's put Rodgers as Springsteen. I think Love's gonna have to be at least Bon Jovi, and not Eddie Money. I don't know where Eddie Money was from. He's dead.
I don't know.
You better not be Gary Glitter. That's all I know.
Oh no. We don't need that player in the NFL.
They still play his song a lot. He doesn't get people are like he doesn't get money for the rights to it anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think most people don't know why they shouldn't like that song or that guy.
I can separate the art from the artist, but but still, it's funny. It did play prominently in Joker, which is the reason why that song.
I still haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not not really an enjoyable movie, but it's an interesting movie.
No.
I think it's worth watching. It's like the only superhero movie I've seen in a long time. Speaking of quarterback controversy and maybe poor management, let's talk about move farther down Lake Michigan and talk about the Chicago Bears as our third team in the NFC North.
Another interesting scenario here. I think we've talked about it, alluded to.
Also, some Patrick Mahomes connections, like the
former. Yeah, and former Chiefs too. Their two backups were former Chiefs backups as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So, starting quarterback from last season, likely the person they want to be the starter, but have not really put a lot of faith in by their offseason moves. Mitch Trubisky. Mm-hmm. This will be his fourth NFL season. It's 26. Out of North Carolina.
I was surprised he was that old. Because he only started 1 year at North Carolina.
Yeah.
Somehow that translated into being the number 2 overall pick.
Right. In 2017, yeah. Right. Ahead of our favorite player.
Ahead of Patrick Mahomes, ahead of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
So 2 more accomplished players in college, and also 2 players who have also become extremely more accomplished in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Deshaun Watson was the most accomplished in college, but Mahomes put up stats that were, eye-popping and had film that was fantastic. I don't know what Trubisky had. He seemed to be a kind of another version of Jared Goff, who was number 1 the previous year, who was not. I don't know. Goff's a decent quarterback, but he's not a top 10 level quarterback. And I think if you're going to draft a quarterback that high, and the Bears traded up from number 3 to number 2 to get him, is thinking somebody else is going to jump ahead of them.
He did have a pretty outstanding season his last year.
Yeah.
His only year as a starter, I guess, right?
Only year as a starter at North Carolina.
Yeah. 3,748 yards and 30 touchdowns, only 6 picks, which is...
Yeah, it's a solid year.
Pretty solid year, yeah.
Again, the ACC is a big conference, although it's still North Carolina. But yeah, he kind of came out of nowhere, and
then after he'd gotten into the NFL, you'd have to say after his second season that the team has had very high hopes for where he might go. 3,200 yards passing, 7.3 yards per attempt, 24 touchdowns, 12 picks, 95 QBR. None of those numbers are bad, but they were better than his first season. And then last year he had 80 more pass attempts with 100 fewer yards. His yards per pass were down 1.2 yards per attempt. Only 17 touchdowns, 12 picks. So his interception numbers went down slightly, but his touchdown numbers went down by a lot more. His QBR regressed to 83 then too. So
yeah, not a great year. Not as terrible as maybe things were made out to be for him, but
it wasn't an advance on his.
It was not an advance. You think a young guy like that's going to keep moving.
And then so now this is entering his fourth and final season of his 4-year $29 million contract. He's due $9.3 million this season.
And they didn't pick up his 5th-year option, which is telling.
Mm-hmm.
And then even in today's pass happy league, 3,100 yards, 3,200 yards is not very many over a course of a season. So.
And again, though, the Bears are similar to the Vikings in the sort of run first kind of offense.
Yeah, but you think with Matt Nagy, they'd want to be something different because Matt Nagy was, of course, with Andy Reid and the Chiefs offense, and I think he wants to have a big offense, but they don't really have the weapons really. Tariq Cohen's pretty good in the backfield, and some as a gadget runner. They have some good running backs. Allen Robinson is a good. Is an Allen Robinson? Is he the?
Who's the Iowa State guy? David Montgomery.
David Montgomery is another running back.
Yeah,
I think the wide receiver. Is that Robinson?
Oh,
for the Bears.
No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, he's the best. He was from Penn State. Yeah, solid pro for them.
Yeah, I only follow the Bears now at this point just to see.
Yeah, he had over 1,000 yards. So good receiver. He was good for Jacksonville too for a few years. So solid player, but yeah, they don't. They're a defense first team, like you said, Khalil Mack and company. They had a fantastic defense 2 years ago, pretty good defense last year, but you need a good offense as well in this league. And even in the NFC North, which is fairly defense first, all the teams seem to be defense first now. Even with
Detroit too, right? With
new coach,
defensive coach.
Even they shouldn't be with Stafford being able to air it out.
Right.
They're going to be defensive. Yeah, they're defensive first, largely based on tradition and idiocy, because that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. There's no real innovation. I think Nagy could be, but he's handcuffed with Trubisky, and so that's why they went out to get the second quarterback, which is Nick Foles. They traded for him. What did they give up in the trade for Foles?
Let's see. It was where'd it go? I thought I had it on here, but I don't see it now.
He's traded for.
No, that was an old one.
It was a 4th-round pick, I think they traded. And they picked up his contract, which was pretty high.
But then they restructured it.
But
restructured it much down. It was kind of interesting how far down they.
Yeah, what's his contract right now? He was making like $18 million or something, wasn't he? At one point?
It was a 4-year, $88 million deal. Okay. And he'd only played the first year of it, and now it's a 3-year, $24 million deal.
Okay.
But it has but he's not the starter necessarily.
He's not the starter,
but he has a lot of performance and incentives.
But he's still making $8 million, which is a lot for a backup.
6.66 million
of this year. Okay, but
it was funny that it came out to be
6.6666
repeating 6.
Yeah, but think about what this was a trade that was made pretty early in the offseason, March 31st, 2020. I saw. So before a lot of the COVID stuff was really known, how long that was going to take and what was going to be affected, but also before maybe better quarterbacks like Andy Dalton, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston came on the market, and they all signed for much, much less money than Foles. And also they signed, they didn't have to lose draft picks. They're free agents.
And yeah, so, and I think I had seen who the draft pick was that Jacksonville had gotten, and I think they were really happy with who they got. It's like a linebacker that's supposed to like really help the team.
Okay. And so I think Foles is a decent quarterback, but given the options, I think one reason they got him was that he was a decent quarterback, but he was not a quarterback that is really going to overwhelm Trubisky as a challenger.
Right.
Like, they brought in Cam Newton. Why would you even pretend, if both players are healthy, why would you even pretend that you want Trubisky over Newton? You might even say the same thing for Andy Dalton or Jameis Winston even, and I think one reason they wanted to bring in another quarterback was to light a fire into Trubisky, but you also didn't want to, and I think from what I've kind of heard, Trubisky is a little bit fragile in terms of his psyche. He is not, and this is from, that he is really good preparing for the game. He knows exactly what to do in every situation. But if he sees something that he hasn't seen before, he kind of is flustered very easily. He is not an improviser. Yeah. And so, if they're playing a team that is not, plays it more by the book, I think he can do pretty well. But if it's a team that can rattle him, well, that's something you really don't like. It's like Mahomes is the opposite. When he gets rattled or has to improvise, he's even better than he is normally, which is fantastic. So it's one of those things where I think, again, probably also as well, Trubisky feels so much pressure because he was picked ahead of Mahomes, picked ahead of Watson, and
a lot of pressure.
He hasn't, last year in Chicago, 2 years ago in Chicago, they had a good team. They had a doink off the upright in the playoffs, which everybody focused on. Oh, let's have a funny open competition for a kicker, and not realize, well, our quarterback isn't very good. He might not be very good, but he's young, so he's going to get better. So, but that didn't happen, and now they're in this situation where they have a kind of iffy starter, and they paid a decent amount of money for a kind of iffy backup. I think Foles is a good player, but
he's been a pretty solid backup though, really, across
his career.
Yeah. So this is his 9th season, and he's played at least 3 games in all of the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in too. So, and he's been in 3 years in Philly, a year with the Rams, a year with Kansas City, back to 2 seasons in Philly again. A season in Jacksonville, now a season in
the Bears. Yeah, he has 48 career starts, 26-22 record. But he doesn't throw 205 yards a game, so not a ton of passing or 71 touchdowns, 35 picks, some more touchdowns, 2-to-1 ratio about. So that's not bad.
But the most important thing though is when he filled in and won a Super Bowl and was a Super Bowl MVP.
He filled in on
there's always that off chance that if the Bears end up being okay.
Yeah, the Bears have a solid.
They've got a guy they know that have success in the playoffs. So
they have a solid roster, maybe.
Yeah.
They had a better roster by 2 years ago. But yeah, like the Eagles had a great team overall. When Wentz got hurt, they had Foles, who was good enough to keep that team going. So maybe they could do that with the Bears.
What I think was interesting, though, I thought with Foles, though, is he had kind of an okay first season, a very nice second season. Third season wasn't so great. At that point, the Philly ended up giving up on him, and they traded him to St. Louis for Sam Bradford, which is almost exactly the same position that Mitch Trubisky's in right now. Not so good first season, pretty good second season, not very good third season, where instead of giving up on him, they're bringing in basically the same guy, has already been through it, to either lead him through it or they're just looking at future and past versions of the same guy. One or the other.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's good. That's an interesting idea. Yeah. It's so. Yeah. It seems like history does repeat itself a lot in the NFL with types of players. It's unfortunate that you get
and maybe even within the same team then too, right? It's like they've already seen this. they could just do the same. I don't understand why like Green Bay is doing the same thing to Rodgers that Rodgers did to Favre. So that seems like the thing you would want to not repeat if you had any chance.
I think they don't like Rodgers. That's why they're doing it to Rodgers.
Yeah.
I think Chicago desperately wants Trubisky to succeed because your GM Ryan Pace, he's still there, even though Nagy is a newer coach than he's the guy who picked Trubisky and traded up to get him. Especially now with hindsight, that was the Sam Bowie of draft picks where. Maybe if they had traded up and they got Deshaun Watson, he's a great quarterback. He's not as good as Mahomes, but he's still pretty good. He's at least, might not be Jordan, but he's Hakeem Olajuwon. That's pretty good. And he's the Darko Milicic he's not LeBron or Dwayne Wade, but he's or Carmelo. He's Darko, and I guess Darko was the first to win a championship out of those players. When he won with the Pistons that year. But I think that's why they brought in somebody who could be decent, but somebody who was not going to frighten poor Mitchell Trubisky out of.
Right.
And probably from what I've seen, I don't know if he can supplant Trubisky as the starter before the season because I think Trubisky is going to get every benefit of the doubt, especially with this truncated offseason and lack of
no preseason games.
Yeah.
One thing on Foles, his best season was 2013, 2,900 yards, 27 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, 119 QBR for the season.
Yeah, so he had that great year. He threw 7 touchdowns in one game, I think, that year. That was when Chip Kelly was really flying high.
Yeah.
The Eagles after Reed left, and.
That didn't last long.
But that year was that Reed's last year in I think that was 2013. I think that was Reed's first year in Kansas City, 2013.
Yeah.
But
so now I guess if we want to skip ahead to the third quarterback on the list, we have another old Chiefs friend.
Yeah, 2013 was Reed's first year in Kansas City.
Okay.
Another old Chiefs friend, our old friend Tyler Bray. What do you remember about Tyler Bray from his time at the Chiefs, Andrew?
I remember one thing. That was his first play.
The one time he got on the field. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was that season-ending 2017 game, right, against the Broncos that Mahomes played the whole game, and then
he came out briefly. Yeah.
They want to get Bray some reps. And what happened to poor Mr. Bray?
Yeah. First attempted handoff and didn't go as planned. Ended up being touchdown the other way, and that's a great.
And then fairly quickly after that, they had to put Mahomes back in to keep the game alive and to keep winning it. And so, but Bray was an undrafted free agent out of Tennessee. I think he came out early that year and was seen as a potential draft pick a couple years later, but was dumb and kind of came out early. So it kind of seemed he was a big arm quarterback, not the brightest guy, but big arm. And the Chiefs picked him around for as a kind of promising prospect for a while, but then they didn't need him when Mahomes.
He's been with the Chiefs for 5 years. He was on, I think, 2 or 3 seasons was on the injured list.
Injured practice squad. Kind of making up a kind of semi-injury on the list.
Coming up to the active roster when somebody was hurt and then back down kind of thing too from the practice squad. But 5 seasons in Kansas City now, 3rd season now in Chicago.
So would you give so what do you think Bray has any shot at playing this year with?
Probably not unless there's multiple injuries. But, I mean, my guess as to how the season goes, which will. Oh, here let me do the Tyler Bray contract thing real quick though. He's on a 1-year, $955,000 deal. So his career earnings after this season will be $4 million. So that will have been equivalent to, for his 4 NFL snaps, to $1 million per snap.
$1 million man, Tyler Bray. Yeah,
not too
that's
bad.
not bad. Good for him.
That was my stat on Tyler Bray. Yeah, I mean, I think what will happen then with the season is Trubisky. I don't know that he's gonna step up. That's my assumption. And then Foles may come in and he may be fine. He may get hurt, and then they may give Trubisky the rest of the year.
I think Foles. Yeah,
that's probably what I'd be very surprised if Bray gets into a game, but there's always that chance for multiple injuries.
Yeah, I think, if Trubisky doesn't do well, and Foles comes in, and Bray can kind of become the new backup because they just want to get Trubisky out of there. But I don't know if that happens either.
They could just fully give up on him.
I think this is a strange one because I think they really, really want Trubisky to succeed, but they also want to look like they're trying to shore up the position and get Foles in there. This is a team that I think next year could have a completely 3 different quarterbacks.
Pretty likely, actually.
Maybe they keep Foles as their caretaker.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Foles will embarrass himself or be run out of town in the way that the Bears fans might get pretty mad if Trubisky plays poorly, and especially if they keep him in too many games. And if he goes downhill, again, fortunately for Trubisky, maybe Trubisky will be more solid this year because he won't have fans in the stands, and he seems to have
or preseason to lose potential, right?
Yeah.
So,
but I think you don't bring Foles in if you don't expect him to play somewhat. You're not going to. You spend a 4th round draft.
Yeah. So how many games does Trubisky get if he doesn't do very well? So
I think Trubisky gets 2 or 3 games for sure.
I was guessing a little further actually. So.
But I think no matter how poorly he does, I think he's going to get 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And
my guess was maybe like 7, 8 as to what, even if he's like not good.
Then you
still get like 7 or 8 games, and then bring in.
I see Trubisky as playing probably 8 games. Foles playing probably 8 games.
Yeah.
Somewhere up or down, maybe a couple here or there.
Yeah.
I could see. The maximum number of games that Trubisky can play is all 16. I think because I think if he starts well, he's going to stick through it.
Yeah.
But
so you think it's like one of 2 things?
I think the maximum number of
16,
games,
or it's 4, or something like that, right?
Yeah, I think the maximum number of games that Foles can play in, barring injury, is probably to start. I'd say it's probably 13. I think they give.
That'd be the most he's ever played in a season is 13 games.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, and that was that second year with the 27 touchdowns and 2 picks. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think is going to be the case here? Do you think Trubisky is going to be the starter at year's end, or is it going to be Foles at year's end?
I think he could be the starter in year's end, but I don't think it'll be because he started all 16 games.
Recycling him back.
It'd be the coming back around to fill in because Foles is injured.
The dead cat bounce.
Because Foles has had some injuries too.
Foles hasn't been. He has had some injury problems.
That's part of why he's not in Jacksonville right now, right? Is because
he got hit.
Minshew took over, right?
Yeah. Well, could Bray be another? Well, Bray hasn't proven to be a Minshew in his little.
Yeah.
But how many games do you think Trubisky will start?
Yeah, so my guess on Trubisky is that he probably gets 7 games to start the year, and then probably will come back for 2 at the end. So I'll say he gets 9.
Oh, 9 and 7. Okay.
9 and 7, yeah.
You think Foles is going to get the other 7? Okay.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. How about you?
Let's. I was going to say 8. Man, I think I want to separate a little farther. I'm going to say Trubisky gets 6, and Foles gets 10. And I think probably the first 6. I think Foles will be decent enough in the last 10, but maybe you could see Trubisky coming back in or something like that. But I think at some point they're going to bring in Foles and have him as the starter because I think they'll have. I don't think Trubisky will be successful as an NFL quarterback. Not that I don't know. Is
this a realistic viewpoint, or is this from the realism, or are you rooting against him?
I'm not rooting against Trubisky. I don't see anything wrong. I don't see anything. It's not. I am not rooting even against Jordan Love. I'm rooting against the Packers management.
Right.
And I'm not exactly rooting against the Bears management here because I can kind of see their position because they ended up making what turned out to be a big mistake, and there's no real way around it.
Do you
but
think they have that Arrested Development moment?
Yeah, but they also want to salvage that
mistake
and make him as possibly good as they can be. And there still is some hope that he can be a decent quarterback. I don't think he's going to be great, but I think he can be decent. But you also want to have a decent backup in case he's not decent. But you don't want a backup that's so good that people are going to want that backup to start over the decent option, you think. So that's why they bring in Foles. But I think the experiment will be, because he's not Nagy's guy, Trubisky. He is Ryan Pace, the GM's guy, but he's not Nagy's guy. So I think Nagy might cut bait before the season's out. So because he also wants to save his job, and he is not tied to Trubisky in the way that the GM.
Well, I don't think it would hurt his career if this doesn't go well for him in Chicago, because they've seen what Kansas City has done when he was there. I think they will see it as him being saddled with a quarterback that can't fit his scheme. Maybe. But I think that Nagy would get another job. That's all
I see.
Going to there. I don't think his career is going to be long.
This is his third season in Chicago. Yeah. I think he might. He had such a good first season. He might get a reprieve, and even if his season's not so good here.
Even in Chicago, you mean, right?
He get one more year after this, but he would definitely have to do well his fourth year. And I think Foles could help him at least get 500 this year, and maybe make sure he has that job.
And I do think that David Montgomery is a solid back too. So if they figure out how to use him more effectively, it may help. It may help Trubisky too.
Rick Cohen is a kind of gadget guy. Pitching out of the backfield.
Montgomery is a very good running back.
And they've got a lot of tight ends.
Iowa State, so I'm glad to see him.
They've got a lot of tight ends help for the Bears this year. So they've upgraded their position. They got a few different. I'm trying to think who they have a tight end. They got Jimmy Graham. Who I guess hasn't fulfilled the promise that he had in New Orleans. But Cole Kmet is their backup right now. He was a second-round draft pick this year. They also have Demetrius Harris as their third. They have a decent number of their tight ends are pretty deep, actually. But yeah, Cole Kmet, that's a second-round draft pick, plus Jimmy Graham. So that's two solid tight ends. And you
can get by with one, but two is a luxury for some teams.
Yeah. So I think there is some hope in Chicago, but it's fleeting if they don't have a good quarterback.
But it's probably more on their running back than it is on their quarterback to be likely to carry the team.
Yeah, and fortunately, again, as you said, they're playing in a division that isn't a high-scoring division, and it doesn't seem to want to be a high-scoring division for some reason, because apparently they think, well, if we keep the scores low, we have a better chance of winning. Well, that is, if you score more points, you have a better chance of winning. That's the thing that you can really control. It seems like, as much as keeping the other team from scoring. I don't understand that mentality, but some people like it. I think Nagy doesn't really have that mentality, but he's been saddled with it because the team is
the history of the Bears too, right?
Yeah, they have. Yeah, again, it's cold. You can't maybe think, you can't pass in the cold weather. You can't. Well, New England has passed in pretty cold weather.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs played in pretty cold weather from what I've seen as well. And,
looking at even like recent history where you have the one team in the division that hasn't necessarily followed that mold of the defense first running back kind of team is the Detroit Lions.
Mm-hmm.
Now recently chosen a defense first coach then to be their, to run the team, right? So fully run the team too, right?
But somebody he's the Belichick of that team because he worked with Bill Belichick.
Yeah. Matt Patricia, right?
Matt Patricia, yeah. Who it seems a little bit like, and this is somebody maybe I should have compared the Packers guys too. When Scott Pioli and Todd Haley came in as the new regime in Kansas City, thinking they were smarter and better than everybody else and trying to do things their way and the right way. And then it turned out, of course, disastrously.
Yeah.
And nobody really has been successful outside of New England. I think the Green Bay situation, that reminds me a little bit of the Pioli Haley situation, where it's a new coach, new GM that really want to stick it to the previous.
Think anybody was bugging the coach though? And
or was there a candy wrapper that nobody saw for a few days that was plan? But I think Patricia is, I don't know, he rubs people the wrong way a lot. But so does Belichick. But Belichick is successful, and if you rub people the wrong way and you're successful, you're just eccentric. But
you can get away with a lot if you're winning.
It's Rodgers too. You can get away with a lot because he's a great player. If you aren't great, what was it? There was a line in Bull Durham, famously, right? If you wipe, clean the scum off your shower shoes because it's gross. If you're in the show and you do that, you're eccentric. But other than that, you're 20-game winner in the show. You're eccentric. Other than that, you're just gross. And I think Patricia is still at the gross level. He's not. He hasn't gotten to eccentric, even though he's a big bearded guy like the two of us.
Yeah.
That like.
That's just kind of hipstery, though, right? So.
Yeah, I don't know. But so we have Matthew Stafford, though, as the number one quarterback in Detroit.
Yep.
Solid player. I think very similar in profile to Matt Ryan in Atlanta. Somebody who can be a top 10 quarterback. Hasn't had a whole lot around him, but if he can thrive, he can be really good. Like last year, before he got hurt, he's had only 8 games started, 64% completion percentage, 2,499 yards, and 19 touchdowns, 5 picks, 106 quarterback rating. That's on pace to finish for 5,000-yard passing.
Right.
And,
which isn't far off of what his typical season stats.
Yeah, he's a solid quarterback. Although one of the things that people kind of make fun of him for is that he puts up a lot of stats in garbage time. When they're down 21, he can score 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. He bring them within 7. Or he's good fantasy football quarterback, but maybe not good real football game quarterback. But that maybe also just be hard on him because the Lions haven't been very good.
Yeah, he did go over 5,000 yards in 2011. Typically, he's around between 4,200 and in the upper 4,000s per season. From like all the way from 2011 to 2017. Most of those seasons were with Calvin Johnson then too. Before
that's always nice.
Retirement.
And
that was after the 2015 season.
But the Lions do have a pretty good core of receivers now, Galladay and other guys, and and Stafford. These are usually running backs they were injured a lot last year.
Yeah.
But they played competitively. They put up a very good game against the Chiefs. The Chiefs were kind of lucky to win in Detroit.
They escaped in that game. Yeah.
That involved a touchdown return, 99-yard touchdown return, where was a little bit iffy. Where if he was down or just kind of dropped the ball, but had some interceptions at the end. Had a lateral from Kelsey to. Who caught that? Who caught that lateral? It was Shady McCoy. It was McCoy who got it. That was his highlight probably of the season for the Chiefs. And so, the Chiefs were lucky to win that game. That was when they were really firing on all cylinders, Detroit, I think. And that was also when Mahomes, of course, was nursing his ankle injury. Yeah. But they could be a good team, I think. But Patricia has rubbed people the wrong way. I don't know, if the defense is going to hold up. The offense seems to be pretty good there, but and the Stafford needs to stay healthy.
Right.
He
was like you said, only 8 games last year.
Number 1 overall pick in 2009 from Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't really he's been solid, but he hasn't been spectacular. But he throws a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns. So he's the number 1 guy. But I think the Lions did a good job though behind Stafford, unlike a lot of the other teams in the division where I don't think they really care that much about the quarterback position, or they're actively trying to ensure an outcome that might not be the best for the team this year by signing certain people. The Lions, I think, have done a good job trying to shore up the position by getting a solid backup in Chase Daniel.
Well, there are a couple things I was going to add to.
Okay, so let's talk more about Stafford.
Stafford, just real quick though. Yeah, only one Pro Bowl, which I thought was interesting anyway. But
especially when like you have 3 quarterbacks at least a year gets assigned, and then one of those quarterbacks is usually going to the Super Bowl. And they don't want to be Super Bowl, so there's usually 4 or 5 quarterbacks that end up
like a rotating thing through seasons, and especially with the long-term 12th season in the league, and putting up big yardage numbers every season too.
Well, the Lions haven't been very good, so I guess that's the main reason.
Yeah, but usually that's how they pick the guy from that team. Will end up being one of these guys that
somebody declines.
Have to select.
Yeah, that's true.
He was the comeback player of the year in 2011. He does have a couple NFL records, which I think is interesting. He has the record for most pass attempts in a season, 727, and has a record for most fourth quarter comebacks in one season with 8 fourth quarter comebacks in one season.
Wow, that's 727 pass attempts in a season. That is like 45 a game average. Yeah. 640 would be 40, and 800 would be 50. So yeah, wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot. So he's in the 3rd year of a 5-year extension that he signed in 2015. So he's gonna make $21.3 million this year.
I bet he's made a lot of money over his career.
Yeah, he'll make $33 million next year, and then he actually his contract is definitely scheduled as a decline then. So $26 million in 2022. So it looks like a planned tailing of the career then too with his. So he's made $211 million to date. He'll be at 262 if he plays out his contract with the.
Okay, so not bad. More. Certainly a good run for anybody.
It's career 69, 79, 1. 41,000 yards, which puts him 18th all time in yardage. Probably will be just outside the top 10 when his career is done in passing yardage, which is pretty impressive for.
Yeah, but part of it's the era that he belongs to. But yeah, still a solid career, solid quarterback. One, I think, I would say he's the 2nd best quarterback in the division. I think he's better than Cousins. I would rather have Matthew Stafford than Kirk Cousins. What do you think? Drew there?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. But what would be interesting is if you had Stafford, like if you switched Stafford onto Green Bay, how would he do there? I think it would be terrible though. So
you think he'd be terrible at Green Bay?
Because they don't have any wide receivers that can run.
They don't have any players. Yeah, and he plays in the cold too much. I don't know if he's from Georgia. I don't know if he can handle it. Yeah. I think he would be just as good or better in Minnesota than Cousins, but
see, I think that would be the more interesting one. If he went to Minnesota and took Cousins' spot,
I don't think
probably could be pretty decent there because
I don't think Cousins would be as good as Stafford though in Detroit. I don't think he could put up the numbers.
No, that would be a mess.
Rodgers in Detroit would be.
That's what you'd want to see, right?
Insane. Yeah. In that dome with a team that wants to score. Yeah.
And what team would you want to see Trubisky on?
I think Trubisky could handle the Vikings.
Probably.
I think they could.
Because he'd be more of a game manager there.
He'd be a game manager. Yeah, I think he could be okay on the Vikings.
I thought you were going to say nobody.
Nobody. Well,
the Vikings. That was what I was guessing you were going to say.
The Vikings don't want a quarterback. Well, they want to pay a quarterback, but they don't want to have a quarterback that's.
But they'd rather pay a quarterback less if they didn't have to.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what are they going to spend the money on? What are they going to beef up the guards or the? I don't know what they. No, they'll get another great running back. It just doesn't. I don't know. I don't understand the try again. I guess there's a market inefficiency where, well, if we don't have a great quarterback, we can do other things. But those other things, I think you still need to score points. And holding if your modus operandi is, well, we're just going to keep the other team from scoring.
Right.
That can work occasionally, but it does not always. It can't work every game. You got to score some points.
It doesn't tend to sit well with the fan base either.
No, and I don't. Yeah, even like teams like the Ravens, who we think are defense first teams, the reason they've been really successful this last few years is because they have an innovative offense, and they score a lot of points. Yeah. But even with Flacco and stuff, they could at least score if they had to, and they could go into New England and score. It wasn't like because they held the Patriots to 3 points and they won 7-3. It was because they could score quite a few points if they needed to.
Yeah.
Flacco threw a good deep ball, and so I don't know. Yeah, I'm. Yeah, so I think, but after Stafford, though, I think the Lions are actually in better shape than a lot of the other teams in that division, even considering the fact that their starter is much better. Their backups are also, I think, better.
Further along, at least.
Maybe not better than Foles. Foles was probably the best backup, but Chase Daniel's a pretty good backup to have. Since he's been in the league since 2009, just like Stafford, undrafted free agent out of Missouri. He's played for a ton of teams: Washington, New Orleans, the Chiefs, Philadelphia, back to New Orleans, Chicago, and Detroit. Only 5 career starts in his long tenure. 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So he's never really played, but he's always been seen as one of these guys who could be a good backup and could step in if necessary.
Yeah, 65 appearances, but only 5 starts. I think that was kind of interesting. Lots of garbage time.
Yeah, he had that game. He played for the Chiefs that one solid start where I think they beat the Chargers or came close to beating the Chargers.
I think he was 1-1.
Yeah,
in Kansas City.
Yeah, so good good backup to have. I think their previous backup, Jeff Driscoll, went to Denver. So they actually had 3 quarterbacks play starting games last year because of their injuries. Because Stafford got hurt, Driscoll got hurt.
Yeah.
But so maybe bringing in Daniel, I think, is a step up above Driscoll as a backup, or at least the equivalent. He's older, but I think he's been around and he's seen things. What do you think of Daniel as a backup?
He's another solid backup though for team.
And he's also one of these definite backups. He's not there to challenge.
Correct.
Stafford as the starter.
Yeah. Well, and I always said his name sounds like it's more of a directive than a
Chase Daniel.
Why? What did Daniel do?
What did Daniel do? Yeah. Or Chase, comma Daniel.
Why do I have to do that?
Or Daniel, comma Chase. Daniel Chase. He's got one of those. His name is a complete sentence, which is unusual and
rare. Yeah. So because of his.
Although you could also say that the third quarterback is also a complete sentence.
Yes, also true.
Well, if you pronounce it in a certain way.
Depending on how you pronounce it. There are lots of possible pronunciations. But,
the 2 main incorrect pronunciations are complete sentences, whereas we're talking about your course about David Blau, Blough, undrafted free agent out of Purdue, 2019. Traded, as you said, as we mentioned off the air, by Cleveland to Detroit prior to the season for swapping of 7th round draft picks or something like that.
Yeah.
Odd. Good. I think they just wanted to. I think Detroit wanted a third quarterback, and Cleveland says, "Well, we kind of want him, but let's just do something."
Right.
But he did start 5 games last year because of injuries to Stafford and Driscoll,
including the Thanksgiving Day game, which is one of those feature games for the NFL. So
he's been in the spotlight, we could say, David Blau.
Exactly.
Not a very outstanding start to his career. 54% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, 6 picks, 984 yards in those 5 starts.
If you want to be very specific about that sentence that you just made, though, he did have a very spectacular start to his career because his first completed pass was a 75-yard touchdown pass.
That's true. So that is the start. If you're talking about
start.
Yes, very good.
Which is in great contrast to Bray's first.
Yes.
First.
Ignominious versus.
Very opposite in there.
Ignominious.
Yeah, first.
That's a word. But yeah. So, but I think having him, they didn't want to. One of the things that they could have done is say, well, Blow played well enough to be a backup, and then draft some other, no-namer or seventh rounder or undrafted free agent to be the third quarterback. But I think here we have, I think Detroit preparing for injury and doing something maybe that you might say they should be rewarded for. So by maybe a solid, spectacular, healthy season by Matthew Stafford. Do you think he will?
Right. Yeah, I think
we don't really have to. I don't think we really have to debate the order of this.
No, yeah, and then salary wise too, I think it's pretty straightforward too. Yeah, because Stafford's making a lot of money, and Daniel's making let's see, he's the first year of a 3-year, $13 million deal. He's making $2 million this year, which I think is impressive though too for career earnings as a pure backup. If he plays out this current contract, he'll make $47 million.
Not bad.
For
an undrafted free agent backup too. So he didn't get that contract that if he had been a first round pick and just been drafted.
Right. Yeah. So if he plays this out, 14 seasons in the league and $47 million for only 5 starts, which is, for him, that's going to be, pretty decent for not having to be the starter anyway. Blau is in the second year of his rookie contract, and he's getting $675K this year.
Okay.
Yeah. 4 touchdowns, 6 picks apparently is his, in the 64 QBR is Blau.
Yeah, so not great, but again,
You're sure it's not Bluff?
Unfortunately, like Jane Pluff, P-L-O-U-G-H, spelled like plow, pronounced like pluff.
Yes.
From our favorite, one of our favorite programs.
And should be one of
the Toast of London. Anybody who watches this program should watch Stephen Toast, the Toast of London, starring Matt Berry as the ineffable, pompous actor Stephen Toast and his arch rival, of course.
Yes.
Ray Bloody
Purchase.
Yes, they are one of the great comic sets of nemesis on television today. Do you think Stafford gets all the games this year? Would you reward them? Would you reward the Lions for their diligence and preparation?
Yeah, I think Stafford's only playing half of last season was probably not the norm. I think he'll play most of the season. I'll say 13 games. Daniel, get the other 3.
Okay, I'm gonna take the SCAF method and say Stafford's gonna play all 16 because the team has shored up their backup situation and they will be rewarded for that. And because they were unfortunately kind of they had a bad luck last year regarding injuries, not just to the quarterbacks but the running backs in a lot of positions. I don't particularly like Patricia as a coach. I don't think he's that great, and I don't think the Patriots method necessarily works well without Belichick. Yeah. But I think all 3 of the other teams in the division are kind of on a downward trend because they have problems in other ways. I think the Vikings are getting stale. They also got rid of one of their receivers, their best receiver, at least their biggest deep threat receiver. The Packers are trying to run their quarterback out of town and not addressing their current problems by trying to look at the future. And I think the Bears are dysfunctional at the quarterback position as well. And so really I think Detroit would be if I were a gambling person, I would say Detroit might be the best team to bet on in terms of reward versus risk. That's what I would say.
All because of Matt Patricia, right?
Yeah, because of Patricia. It starts at the top down, really. I'd say Matt Stafford probably, really, because he's a good quarterback. He's not, he's Matt Ryan level. I'd say maybe 9, 8, probably top 8 to 10 at kind of ceiling level.
Yeah,
Ryan's won an MVP, of course, but he played on better teams in Atlanta than Stafford played on in Detroit. But
Yeah. Well, Stafford puts up the numbers, but isn't necessarily efficient. And,
That's true too.
And the team hasn't tended to have that strong of a defense to be able to handle a quarterback that's scoring quickly and getting off the field and leaving the defense out there for a longer period of time that can't handle that. So, yeah. So what do you think the division's going to end then? What's your guess for how the division finishes, like 1 through 4?
1 through 4. I think the Vikings are the favorites, but I don't like what the Vikings have done in the offseason. I don't really like the Vikings. Again, I don't like really what 3 of the teams have done, and I don't really think Detroit's been great in the offseason. But I think with just being healthy helps them, and they haven't really gone downhill.
Yeah.
So
We're playing it safe no matter what, right? So
I actually like Detroit to be the division winner this year.
Really? Detroit number 1.
Detroit 1, Minnesota 2, Green Bay 3, Chicago 4.
All right.
I part of that.
Realistically, we could pick these in any order, any of the possibilities of the however many different combinations there are.
24 combinations.
Yeah. And you could justify it though, right? So it's
yeah, you could say, well, I think Green Bay's going to bounce back because they still have the best quarterback. Rodgers is going to be so angry that he does not want Love to even sniff a possible starting role, so he's going to dominate.
Yeah.
Or you could say the Bears are going to be strong because Trubisky's going to have a bounce back season, or Foles.
Or they give up on him and Foles does well, right? Yeah. It could be either one. And
the Vikings are solid and they're going to stay solid. The other teams are flighty at best, and they're going to win the division again.
Yeah. My guess is that the division ends up beating each other up. And
a lot of 8 and 8, 9 and 7.
And so it's going to be. I think it's going to be a really close race, and there may be lots of tiebreakers involved to get to what the final is. But I still think Green Bay, just because of Aaron Rodgers, that they're still going to hold on somehow. Maybe not even winning many games outside the division, but winning the right games at the right time. So I'm still going to keep Green Bay at 1. And I think I'll leave Minnesota at 2 because I think they play it safe, and they won't end up with one of those 6 and 10.
They're solid seasons. I think they'll be solid again, but I think they're treading water rather than moving up.
I do think Detroit will advance somewhat, so I'll put them in 3, and then the Bears 4th.
Okay. I think the Bears. I think we both have the Bears, so we both have the Bears at 4.
Yeah, but they could be 4th with an 8-8 record though too, right?
We also have 3 more divisions left to cover. We will get back next time with the AFC North, another interesting division with some maybe more clear-cut choices also as the starters there. But that's coming up maybe in a couple of days at the most. We hope we'll try to get all these done before the season starts in early September 10th, the Thursday night game with the Chiefs and the Texans, which seems to be going ahead as scheduled. So hopefully we'll have NFL football in a couple of weeks, and I think these segments have gotten a little longer each time because we've been talking. Maybe partly because we're excited the season's going to start, but also just because we enjoy ragging on Jordan Love. But I think we should probably wrap this one up tonight and come back next time with a even better part 6 of our series. So thinking about that, let's adjourn. I'm, as always, Mike Werman. He is, as always, Andrew Scaff. We are, as always, the Warning Track Power Hour. Please like and subscribe to our little channel here. We already have upwards of half a dozen subscribers, don't we? Is that what we're at right now? So anyway, we'll bid you good day. How was that?
That was great.
Nailed it. Yeah.
Nailed it.
Oh, yeah. Good. Okay. So I think, yeah, all right. That was you got a lot of editing probably to do, or at least it's just gonna be an extra long power hour.
It's gonna be long, but yeah. I'll let a lot of it ride though, because it doesn't matter. I mean, we're not limited by time.